If you're in your living room, you're saving £350. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Why a Mini? Why? To make money, of course. That's Nintendo's answer anyway.
See you online. An eye-opening look at the video conferencing road to Microsoft NetMeeting.
Head Over Heels 2. The developer finally finishes making the sequel after 37 years.
And War of the Worlds along with Dave's Dungeon coming up on this week's show for the week of Saturday, the 6th of June, 2026.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
So basically, I told my representation that the experiment with Chris and Chris alone was fine, but we're never going to do that again. We're just never going to do that again. So that's why I'm Jason, Chris is over there, and we have Ian Lee with us this week. Thank you so much for coming back to the show, Ian.
I know why you've got me. It's because I've got hair. And you've probably had complaints. The people, men of a certain age who've got a full head of hair are grossly underrepresented on this podcast. So I'm here. I'm ticking a box. I know I'm filling a quota, but it's a thrill. I love this show. I listen to it every week. I was telling you before, I alternate between you and Reese as to which one I listen to first. Thank you so much for asking me. It's very kind.
Well, and funny that you mentioned Reese in that context, because one of my all-time favorite comments on an episode of This Week in Retro was the last time we had Reese on, and somebody just commented in all caps, "Why has that one got hair?" So it's actually upsetting for some of the viewers when we do break the usual pattern. And Chris, Ian, Chris, I know it feels like you may know each other, but you don't, because
it's weird. I thought we'd met. Yeah,
Ian's been on the show twice before, but the first time was an off week during Chris's first stint on the show, and the second visit was during the Chris Interregnum, and both predated me joining the show.
Yeah.
This is, and obviously, Jason, we've spoken a few more times because of the Retro Adventurers. But Chris, it's very, very nice to meet you. I have to say, I think you get short shrift on this show. And I think they treat you appallingly. So
They do. They call me the fake Australian and all sorts of other nasty names.
Awful. And I think you're one of the top 3 presenters on This Week in Retro. I'm going to give you
Historically or present, or we'll save that.
Yes. Well,
let's say that.
So, Ian, when you're not with us, I understand you've got quite an interesting mixed media tour coming up, and that you've got large venues and very intimate venues as well. Can you give us a little context on that?
Very quickly, I'm doing a lot. I work as a counsellor. Mental health is my kind of full-time job, but I've gone back to performing, and I'm doing a show called Imposter Syndrome, which is me looking. I've got about 300 VHS tapes of stuff I did back in the 90s and the early 2000s. So the show is me talking about that and showing some clips, and I'm playing some theatres. But I'm also doing this really cool thing that for some reason the press thinks is a fall from grace, where I'm doing shows in people's living rooms. And I'm having the time of my life. It's really small. I did a show the other week. It was for a couple. And the day before, the husband emailed me to say, "I'm afraid my wife can't make it. It's just going to be me." And yeah, exactly. I thought this is going to be weird. But what an experience. And I went to this guy's house and I did the show for him, and we had a lovely couple of hours. So I'm having a great time. If you want to pay me, I will come to your living room and mess around for a couple of hours. I love it. It's kind of mumming in the traditional sense of going around and telling stories to people.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Seems ideal. And I've got something to plug, actually. By now, the June episode of the Strange Studies of Strange Stories podcast is out. It features the short story Founding Father by Clifford Seemack, and I am their guest reader this time around. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Chris, you got anything to plug? Plug in?
No plugging. I have been playing a Tic Tac in 3D is what I've been doing. And I've also been playing an adventure game, actually, Jason. I don't know if you've heard of it, but what's it called? Blueprints, which is a 2025 game, modern era PC. And basically, just to unpack it, you are a great nephew of somebody who's passed away. They've left you this manor and this estate, but you have to unlock the mystery of the estate in order to gain your inheritance. And each day the manor resets, and no 2 days are the same. So as you're mapping through the house, every single room is different from the previous day, and there's different challenges and there's different puzzles. And it's, I'm not a big adventure game fan. My son Luke, we've been playing it together. I absolutely freaking love this game. It's amazing. Yeah, check it out.
If I may say, I shivered then because that a tick attack thing absolutely does me. It's attic attack. Come on, guys, please.
It's attic attack. Well, look, they spelt it wrong in the first place. Don't blame me.
Bluesky, is that the one where you've got to get to the 36th room?
You were the 46th room of a 45-room house or whatever. Yeah, that's the one.
It is,
yeah.
I could never play it. It's too complicated. I love watching people play it, though. It's so well done. It's beautiful. Very, very clever.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing game. Yeah. Cool. Right, shall we get into the show?
Let's do it.
It's mini console time again. And what I love about mini consoles is how polarizing they seem to be in the retro gaming community. Or maybe it's just the Amiga community. But even on the larger scale, it seems purists loathe them. Collectors lose sleep over whether their It's for Nostalgia, honest gov, legit original collections will lose value. And flippers, well, they buy them in bulk and then sell them at inflated prices when they think the official run is over. And the question is often spitefully asked, who's this product even for? I'm a simple purchaser. If I see a product, if I like it, well, I'll buy it. If I see a product I don't like, then I don't buy it. I don't see the need to post in every community going how I hate a product unless it's the Ferrari Luce. But I think I'm in good company on that one. Guys, any thoughts actually on Ferrari's EV? Have you seen pictures of it?
It's just not right to have a Ferrari that's an electric car. I have no idea what you're talking about. I barely understand it.
It's not so much the fact that it's electric. It's the fact that it looks like a BYD. It looks like every other EV out there.
Well, that was my first reaction. Yes, I'm pulling these photos up. I'm like, okay, that just looks like all of the other things that are this thing. So
Right. Like, would you put that as a poster on your wall and dream of one day owning it? I don't think so. Okay. This is relevant, trust me. How is it relevant? Well, I think the Ferrari Loser is a terrible product. Other car manufacturers, however, have ignored the purist fans and brought out models, usually much cheaper than the flagship, and released them upon the masses to secure a new, more attainable audience. Porsche springs to mind, and they upset every 911 owner ever with the release of their Boxster in 1996, and then dared to target soccer mums with an SUV in the form of the Cayenne around 2002, and a smaller SUV, the Macan, which is actually a really nice drive, and that was in 2014.
Am I on the right podcast? I'm so sorry. Yeah. I thought we were talking about retro. It's cars,
no, trust me, we'll get in there. We're getting there. It's relevant. While every 911 owner cried themselves to sleep mumbling, "Stop diluting the brand," Porsche laughed themselves all the way to the bank, having saved the company from certain financial annihilation. OKYam894 has made us aware of a short story on NintendoEverything.com about a similar story, which is more in our niche. First of all, before we get into it, did either of you guys own a Nintendo Wii U?
I will be honest, at the time, this is how badly it was marketed. I didn't know what the Wii U was. I had a Wii, I had all of that generation of consoles. And then I saw the Wii U and I thought it was like an add-on for the Wii, but it was... listen, if I'm missing what a games console is, then the Nintendo they got it massively wrong.
Yep. Jason?
Nope, never owned one and had a very similar experience where I'm just like, okay, so is this the thing that's the other thing? It's not the other thing? Where did the discs go? What are we doing? I'm not sure.
Good. Yeah. It's not just me, because I didn't own one either. I played with one in a shop and that was it. The Wii was great, and adding HDMI and a controller that was also a screen, it didn't really add much, not for me anyway, so I skipped the Wii U. The original Wii sold around 101.6 million units worldwide, according to my research anyway, with the Wii U only managing to pull in 13.5 million. That's a massive drop in comparison. Now, imagine when that follow-up was not so successful, and it's nearing the end of its life, and your follow-up product isn't even on the horizon, never mind ready for market. You got to do something. Well, according to this story, that's why in 2016, Nintendo scrambled for their Porsche Boxster product. They needed to release something and fast, and they needed it to be something that they already owned. So dive into their back catalog they did and released a mini NES in 2016 and followed that up with a mini SNES the year after. This conspiracy theory has, according to the story, been confirmed by former Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé. I'm going to pronounce it. Jason, help me out.
I think it's Fils-Aimé, but...
Fils-Aimé? Okay, cool. Reggie is, in fact, quoted as saying, open quote, "We did that to sustain our business because we needed something to sell at volume come the holiday season. So it was a series of commercial ideas, knowing full well that, the Wii U was on life support," end quote. So returning to my original opening point, when it comes to the age-old question, who is this product for? I'm going to tell you. These minis were for Nintendo. They were to make money, and it worked. They identified a probable, sizable market and a product they could churn out with ease, and boom, minis for Christmas and money in the bank. Guys, what do you think of this approach? Jason?
I mean, Nintendo's market strategy has been for a long time about scarcity, right? They keep people wanting, why don't we have a new Mario game? Why don't we have a new Donkey Kong game? Why don't we have a new console? Why don't we have this? And I guess it's been working out well enough, right? That they're still chugging along despite, now competing against mega, international, diversified conglomerates in the form of, Sony and Microsoft even, not to mention, Samsung and all the rest of that. So there, you can't pick at the strategy too much, but yeah, it does certainly make sense that they would have put out a product like this to help, through a tough time. This is not a perfect one-to-one comparison, but to roll the clock back a bit, it's well understood that being able to sell the Infocom back catalog and basically just have it be pure profit in various rebundled forms was what helped Activision survive, some of the troubled times in the early 90s. Putting hardware into retail is more complicated than that. There's more upfront cost, but the principle is still similar. What do we own outright that people might still like to buy from us? And so saving, honestly, products like this for that rainy day, that seems like a pretty good strategy.
I do not get this snobbery around the minis and all of these things. I've signed up for the Vectrex Mini. I'm pointing there because I used to have a Vectrex and I sold it. I've signed up for the Vectrex Mini and I'm really excited. And then I saw loads of people, some quite big YouTubers going, well, it's an LCD screen, so it won't actually be authentic vector graphics and therefore I'm not. Okay, fine. Don't buy it. I've got it because it'll look cool back there. I'll probably play it once or twice if I'm completely honest. I might get it out when the kids come. They used to like my Vectrex. But these people are so snobby about it. If I don't like a product, I don't buy it. I don't go online and go, well, this is absolute rubbish and no one else should be buying it. I've got my C64 Maxi and I used that once and it looked great. And I've got my Misters and all of that stuff. So I'm covered with the emulation. But things like the Vectrex, it looks beautiful, great. Someone's doing something with those games. Bring it on.
Of course, you can't just make any old thing and turn it into gold. So while on one hand, I stand by my primary point here in that companies are out to make money, well, that only works if you make something people want to buy. I think the NES and the SNES minis were a no-brainer, given the original NES sold just under 62 million units globally and the SNES just over 49 million, both still more substantially than the Wii U, of course. But you see my point. There was an instant potential market, and of course, Nintendo owned the rights to most of the games, if not all. So no hoops had to be jumped through. And, we think about the likes of Retro Games Limited, they have a much harder time to actually bring out a device like this and license all the games. So I do wish people understood that more.
And by the way, just to correct myself, I believe it's Fils-Aimé. My apologies to the listening audience and to Madame Pease if she's listening and still out there.
Très bien, merci. And I think that's why these two mini consoles worked, because they could stack them with the most memorable games from their back catalogue with very little legal resistance and just go to market. So who were these products made for? The collector, the purist, the niche little hobby market we all know and love. or the mass retail impulse Christmas gift for the average punter on the street who just wants a plug-and-play nostalgia hit which will end up collecting dust in 6 months' time. That's the roughly 60 million people who will have some memory of the originals, and at the right price, they'll be tempted back. I know which one I'd target if I was trying to put money in the bank. And before you poo-poo the whole idea, be honest, that's how many of us ended up back here and got back into collecting the real thing. Seeing the 64 Mini in my local EB Games, a tiny shop in the Perth Hills, that was the beginning of my return. And here I am now surrounded by original kit and loving it. And that's why Minis, reissues, systems on a chip, so long as they work and are affordable, supporting them is a hill I'll die on, and I make no apologies for that. We are sponsored once again, thank you very much, by PCBWay, who, as you will probably be aware of, are fantastic at producing PCBs, doing CNC machining, 3D printing, all sorts of fantastic stuff, highly regarded around the world. And Jason, I believe you've been looking at their projects.
We do. We always look at their shared projects, which is a kind of combo international design laboratory and social media platform. You can submit projects, you can contribute to projects, you can vote on projects. There's the Project Aura AQ Sensor Hub. This is an open source ESP32S3 based air quality monitor. It's got a touchscreen UI, local web dashboard, MQTT, and Home Assistant support. So you can set up your air quality sensors wherever you like. This one, a very specific use. I'm supposing this is probably for like industrial flight simulators. They don't ever quite say. They just keep saying professional simulation environments. It's the Smart Shaker device, an industrial grade all haptic controller. So we're not talking about vibrating your controller here. We're talking about you need very, very precision, minimal latency information about turning, tactile input into tactile data out. So the Smart Shaker device. And then a couple of musical themed ones, space drums. It's open source air drums. So the idea is these are a couple of ESP32 based drumsticks, and you can kind of create and define your drum kit in virtual space and go to town. And the portable DJ rig for mixing on the move. Now, guys, I'm not even joking here. It just seems like approximately 3 in 4 British men of a certain age are actively or have had been DJs at some point. So I assume that both of you are DJs. I'd like, no. Seriously, the amount of like grown men running around like, oh yeah, I'm a DJ. I'm like, really? Okay. I guess there's just enough demand for this. And
it became a thing a while, maybe 15, 20 years ago, that everyone was buying decks. Everyone's like, I'm going to get some decks set up in the kitchen. And I never fell for that. But it's very, very popular.
Yeah. You can get ready to mix anywhere with this innovative DJ rig designed for the Hercules DJ Control Mix. So I presume that's one of the major suppliers there. So again, PCBWay got you covered if you're looking to getting into DJing late in life. So thank you for PCBWay for their ongoing support, all the shared projects they let us take a look at every week or every other week as the case may be. If you would like to sponsor an episode that's in those off weeks, please give us a ring at twir@thisweekinretro.com. And by ring, I mean email. Mike C76 shared a video from a retro tech channel that was new to me. It's called The Serial Port. It describes itself as a virtual museum. And it asserts in the title of the video that Microsoft NetMeeting was way more important than you think. And honestly, I couldn't remember the last time that I thought about NetMeeting. So challenge accepted, Mr. Serial Port. And it turns out they're totally right. This is really a cool story, even though the punchline is also that no, your memory is not playing tricks on you. You probably didn't use NetMeeting a whole lot because it turns out even the Microsoft people who were expected to do so didn't usually spend a whole ton of time in the platform. What we get in the video is a very accessible and personality-driven exploration of the development of a whole stack of technologies and concepts, which get us to not just the actually good video conferencing that we take for granted today, but also one of those realizations that sometimes the big invention is the one that we make along the way to something else. Much of the history in the video revolves around a computer engineer named Neil Starkey, who is ideally positioned as a frontman for this story because he was a radio engineer and disc jockey before he got into computers, which makes it a very natural hook. We have a professional DJ or radio host on the line as well. We hear a little bit more about that soon. The meat of the story focuses on a lot of things that happened before NetMeeting came out 30 years ago, like the development of the T120 networking standard, which basically is meant to describe systems of interoperable conferencing systems. Now, there was a lot of interest and a lot of big money interest in video conferencing. The US government, and in particular the military, really, really wanted video conferencing to work, and they were willing to put money into it, like as much as $1 million per station to have a viable station to do it. And Starkey's DataBeam company, as well as a UK outfit known as Data Collection Limited, Hughes, some other big firms worked at these problems, and this is apparently where we get things like the first ever LCD projector. These were designed to, throw a military decision maker's pixelated, image onto a far wall in a situation room or in a command post or something. So before long, the US government realizes, okay, this tech is expensive, but we don't want to be completely taken for a ride by getting ourselves into vendor lock, kind of just propping up one company that can keep bleeding us indefinitely. So they pushed everybody to create an open specification to combine data, voice, graphics into a single conference stream. This is very smart. And this is the part of the story where, Starkey says he had to learn to navigate, United Nations standards bodies. That's worth the watch alone, where he says, there were 90 minutes of meetings and 2 hours of coffee breaks, but the coffee breaks are actually where the decisions get made. So just learning your way through that stuff is a really cool story. The story of this tech's development is ultimately one of belief that a lot of things are going to catch up with where we want to be rather than where we are. One of the key limitations that keeps coming up is the resolution. Because even under what would be pretty good conditions by the early 1990s, if you remember opening an early PDF on a 640 by 480 VGA screen, or doing serious word processing or desktop publishing on an early 16-bit machine, you will get how and why that's true. You get this little window, into a much bigger document. It's hard to represent a lot of serious information on lower resolutions, something that I know my two very large computer monitors in front of me, easily forget today. So when did you guys give video conferencing any kind of chance? And Ian, I'm particularly interested to know, was it personal or professional? Because I know a lot of voice pros were pretty early to remote audio streaming. So were you among them before all this stuff really hit the mainstream?
No, I was never important enough to get an ISDN line that would be wired in, and it would basically be broadcast quality. I was not important enough. I do know someone who did. He was a political correspondent, so you needed to get him quickly. I'm trying to think back. I do remember, this is slightly off tangent, but I do remember phone calls with video was always the big aim. Everyone wanted to do it. And I remember I was doing a TV show in 2003, and the 3 network brought out, I think, the first video phone, mobile phone. But you had to be on the 3 network for it to work, and it wasn't a very big network. And I remember this cameraman saying, oh, you should get one of these video phones and you can do video phone calls. And I said, but I don't know anyone on it. And he said, well, I'm on it. We can phone each other up. I thought, but I work with you 3 hours a day and I don't know you very well. I remember using Skype video, I guess in 2007. I've just Googled it. They didn't start doing video until December 2005. It feels like it's kind of always been here. And I miss Skype terribly. And of course, during lockdown, it really picked up. There was Zoom. There was also House Party. They were kind of vying for each other, who was going to be the winner. And then there was a big leak of all the House Party users. And the rumor was Zoom had done it to destroy House Party. But it's weird now because I really had to struggle to think back to when I first used video conferencing, because we do it all. I do it for work now. We're doing it for this. It's everywhere.
For me, it would have been personal. I did use NetMeeting for work, but that was much later, probably around, 2007. But no, it was back in the day when we first moved over to Australia. I'd already set up MSN Messenger. So I'm talking end of 2002 into 2003. MSN Messenger I'd set up back in the days of, you had ADSL if you were lucky, or you had dial-up. And I'd set it up on my Pentium 3, which is a machine I now own again, but I'd left that in the UK for my parents so that specifically, they could use it for whatever they wanted, but the main purpose was so that we could keep in touch while we had moved over to Australia. And so I set it up, but back then it was really hit and miss as to whether or not you got a connection. And if you did get a connection, I'm talking within MSN Messenger, and if you did get a connection, is audio going to be working? Is video going to be working? And will all the planets align and both be working at the same time? It just seemed to be really hit and miss. And then enter my frustrations. So a bit like your frustrations, Ian, with somebody saying, I've got this system, you should get it too. That's how family communication went. I'm trying to keep in touch with people from the other side of the world before Facebook really took off and stuff like that. And I've got family going, oh, MSN Messenger, hell no. Everybody uses Skype now. So I resisted for a while, and then I had to get on board with Skype. And by the time I got on board with Skype, they're like, hell no, everybody uses Facebook Messenger now. So I slowly get on board with Facebook Messenger, to which they say, what are you using that for? We all use WhatsApp. To which I laugh back in their face and go, well, that's been bought out by Facebook. Anyway, but it's just this, ever-changing shift as to which is the in vogue communication tool. Professionally now, though, I find, there has been a plethora of stuff. Zoom really did take off in lockdown, like you said, Ian. But now, for me anyway, it just seems it's Microsoft Teams or nothing. And that's what everybody's using.
If I may just very quickly say for the geeky radio heads, up until as late as 2019, so just before COVID, if you wanted to broadcast radio remotely and you didn't have a truck, you used to have to use a thing called a Comrex, and it came in two massive suitcases. I went to the States with it. These two massive suitcases, it weighed a ton, and you would plug it into the internet, and you had to hope you had a good internet connection, and it was supposedly broadcast quality. It wasn't quite. It had that slightly trebly sound. So if you were listening, you could tell it wasn't in the studio. And it wasn't until COVID that the station I was working for at the time finally said, oh, we can do it online. Someone has developed a program where you can broadcast to the studio online in broadcast quality. That's really recent. Really recent.
Yeah. And it's great hearing about those stories where, the technology exists, but do you have the bandwidth? Can you find somebody else to use it? Yeah, it's pretty amazing how much it's changed. So by the time the early 1990s roll around, as the documentary lets us know, you don't need $1 million to do video conferencing anymore. You can get it for, say, a few $1,000s per workstation, maybe $6,000, maybe a bit less if you're a smart shopper willing to compromise on some features. You are going to need the additional expense of an ISDN line for each site. For that, you'll get about a quarter VGA resolution, 352 by 288 for your troubles, which is not a whole lot. But a trade group called the International Multimedia Teleconferencing Consortium is working to try to commercialize and standardize all this stuff, provide the kind of stability that Microsoft likes to get involved with when that company starts getting serious about TCP/IP. And in fact, this is like the story within the story, and I don't think that This Week in Retro has ever covered this. About 21 minutes into the video, they talk about a now infamous internal memo from Steven Sinofsky to Bill Gates. It's from February 1994. Sinofsky at the time was an important technical mind and a group program manager at Microsoft, and he was somebody who had the co-founder's ear on a lot of important issues. So the story goes that he's visiting his alma mater, Cornell University. He has to stay longer than he'd planned because of weather, and he's just kind of traveling around the campus, and he's noticing how popular a wide variety of internet applications were on campus. How many students are making daily use of them, and not just the tech heads. How cheap and easy TCP/IP networking was making all of this possible. And not coincidentally, Cornell is also where the video streaming protocol CU-See-Me is being developed. And I know that we've talked on the show recently about how pivotal the mid-1990s are to the world we're in today, but Sinofsky lays it all out. It's this 11-page memo, but he lays out the Mac is dominating the campus. It's got meaningful advantages over Windows in this moment. And he's telling Bill Gates this. And he says, it's really easy for them to get connected because they've got Mac TCP and it's pretty easy to set up. But he goes, but the market for Macs is kind of frozen right now, February 1994, because the first PowerPC Macs are still a month away. They'd actually been delayed. And people are waiting and seeing rather than buying more of the old 68,000 series machines. I mean, this memo is astonishing. It's somebody telling Bill Gates, hey, I think we should rethink all the assumptions about our next generation products. He says, we should make Chicago, which is the thing that we later know as Windows 95, we should make Chicago an internet native operating system so that we can take over university computing, be part of this internet culture. And that is exactly what happens in the second half of the 1990s. This memo is great stuff. I'm dismayed that I've never read it over before. I'd ask you guys to take a look at those 11 suggestions. Did any of the recommendations jump out at you guys?
I didn't understand it. I was gonna bluff my way through and go, well, yeah. It was way over my head. However, it is wonderful. I always think, Bill Gates came up with it. Bill Gates invented this. Of course, he had incredibly intelligent, bright people around him. But it is amazing I did understand some of it. I'm being slightly hard on myself. That was the tipping point that took computers, that took Windows, that took Microsoft into that direction. And we could be living in a very different world had that memo not been sent, had Bill Gates not gone, not accepted it, instead of going, this is trash, or whatever he would have said. So yes, it was a very interesting read.
What jumped out at me, and this probably isn't what you're looking for, Jason, but starkly from the opening, is how personable the language was. It's telling a story. There's lots of, descriptive language in there. And that's not how we write in the corporate world anymore. Well, certainly not in the circles I move in. It's get to the point, dot points, move on. What are you talking about here? Whereas it's like something I would read in an adventure game as you're sort of uncovering the backstory. It's a really interesting read. As for the recommendations, again, similar to you, Ian, what really jumps out at me is not so much any individual recommendation, but the whole overall feel that this was the cusp. This was a tipping point. And it was somebody going, hang on a minute, this is big and we need to do something here because this is going to explode. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Seems so obvious to us now, but at the time it took someone to look at it from a slightly different angle to realize exactly what the potential was.
But yeah, you're right. The fact that it is an 11-page memo, and it is right, it is good writing. Like he's sitting down and saying, I'm laying out my case, and he's expecting his boss to read it, and his boss does. I mean, it does kind of break everything down on this last page into like, here's my big takeaways. But this is somebody who he may have some time to kill on campus, and maybe that's why he wrote long. But he's making it is not just a slide deck of two slides and some bullet points. It's much deeper than that. What struck me is I love how much Gopher shows up in these. Like Gopher was unironically a tech that blew me away when I first saw it in 1993, the kind of early hypertext exploration. I love the line, one of his suggestions was, quote, support someone who is willing to implement the current internet fad server services, including Gopher, Wace, www, Archie, list services, and name services natively on Windows NT. For some services, it might be appropriate to implement them on Chicago. And of course, the idea of, we're calling World Wide Web a fad. The search functions represented by Archie and Wace, we're calling them, like, these are far from fads. That kind of became, the essence of the internet experience for most people. Apart from embracing TCP/IP networking, Sinofsky also says they should look into See You, See Me, obviously, both on the client and the server side. And I had forgotten about this. At the time, that system was video only. Remember when we were talking about when did Skype get video? It was only audio. At first, one of these video conferencing systems, they're like, you know what? Syncing them both up is too hard. Just do a traditional conference call to cut down on latency and bandwidth. We'll just deal with video. They did eventually, but again, you can see they see the future coming. They see these obstacles are going to be removed. Microsoft goes on to license DataBeam's T120 toolkit in early 1995, and in the second quarter of 1996, they release Microsoft NetMeeting, which, like See You, See Me, was free to download and use. You get voice data and application sharing, now a reality for most connected Windows users. Took another year to get video into the mix on that. And in a lot of stories, this would be the point where Microsoft goes on to dominate everyone and everything, and there's never again any meaningful commercial competition. But we know that's not what happened, because there's been a lot of competition over video services. And as we've alluded to, there was that real stress test 6 years ago, which separated the wheat from the chaff. Companies like Zoom are worth nearly $30 billion today. And I definitely know there were some pretenders that when they were put to the test in March, April 2020, they were like, we can't actually do this. Bye. Nope. This is not the point in the story where Microsoft gets a stranglehold on video conferencing. In fact, NetMeeting itself doesn't last. It is still shipped, but not being advertised by the time Windows XP comes out, which, you guys, is 25 years ago, if you weren't feeling old already today. And it's buried entirely by late 2003. So it's interesting, Chris, that you were still using it years later. It did still work. They just weren't really actively supporting it. But in the process of stringing together all this application, sharing data and voice and audio streams, Microsoft and some of their frenemies like Citrix realized that, wait a minute, we're also innovating around the concept of computer remote display and control. So Microsoft says, hey, we can codify what now becomes known as remote desktop protocol. And this becomes hugely important to all sorts of enterprise deployments in the form of Windows NT terminal server, a bunch of other remote management applications. So Chris, you are our real world IT guy. Do you have any history of working with your RDP or its workalikes?
Look, I've used remote desktop in support, and that helped me get lazy and fat because I didn't have to walk around like multi-story buildings to go to people's desks. So that was probably a bad thing for me to discover. And it's not exactly the same, but essentially does the same thing. I don't know if you remember a system called Log Me In. Do you remember that? Yeah. A favorite of hackers for a while, but that's not why I was using it. I worked for a carrot farm, funnily enough, among the many things that I've done. And that was basically a 40-minute drive from where I lived at the time. And part of what I did there was I did the export documentation and I did the paperwork that had to be used for containers to get through the wharf for exports of our product. And if those container numbers were wrong, which occasionally they were, I would get a call from the truck driver at about 5 a.m. and he'd be very angry saying, they're not letting me through. They say the numbers don't match. Can you fix it? And I'd have to drive 40 minutes, get to the office, boot up a PC, connect to the internet, fix the container numbers, wait for that to go through, blah, blah, blah. As soon as I discovered Log Me In, well, I set up the PC in the office so that was running and I'd never shut that PC down again. And this was tested in several real-world scenarios. Get a call, 5 a.m. I roll out of bed. I go, yep, no worries, Lance, as the truck driver's name was. And I said, bear with me. And I'd get onto my PC at home. I'd log in to the computer that was 40 minutes drive away, and I'd fix the container numbers while he was on the phone. I'd say, there you go, mate. And I remember the first time I did this, I said, it's fixed. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I've just logged in from home. I've fixed it. Ask them if it's okay. And the shock in his voice when he said, yeah, it's all done. I go, right, I'll see you later. And I went back to bed. And it was the best thing ever. Being able to remote into another machine, see everything on that desktop and interact with every single application. There was a bit of lag because essentially how Log Me In works, unlike proper remote desktop, is it's drawing the screen and turning that into a series of interactive hotspots. But it does the job, and fantastic. That was bliss.
Carrot lovers around the world are saluting you, Chris, for your service. Thank you for that.
All the way to the Maldives. I don't think we exported any further than that. They start going off.
So, Ian, I'm really interested in your perspective here. I mean, you are a live radio professional. You've done live and live to tape TV. So did you ever, see the day where like custom video streams might significantly replace either the live broadcast or live person in show experience? Are you ways that you're surprised this hasn't happened more?
Lockdown was the big thing, right, where it really took over here. And I remember doing it was a panel show, TV show, where obviously there was social distancing and they would normally have 3 guests, but the set wasn't big enough to have 3 guests socially distanced. So they had 2 guests and they had a screen in the middle. And I was the guy on the screen in the middle. And there's always been this phrase in television. Even when I was a kid, actually, and I had a Betamax as opposed to a VHS, it was broadcast quality. That was always the phrase. And I'm old enough to remember the 80s, 90s. I remember that Terry Wogan had Peter Cook and Dudley Moore on as guests, but Dudley Moore was in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. And so you had to book a satellite, and you had the satellite for about 12 minutes before it went out of range. And the picture quality was terrible. So the concept now, I can do a TV show with this camera and this microphone. I still find it absolutely wild. And a lot of radio stations, the webcam was a gimmick. It would refresh every 30 seconds. Now a lot of radio stations are broadcasting as TV stations. You can log on and you can watch the radio show from a multicam setup in 4K and no one blinks an eye at it. Of course, I don't like watching radio shows. I listen to the radio. For me, this is why I listen to your show as a podcast, because I prefer that experience. But yes, but it happens now. It's wild.
Also the hair problem, but that's, neither here nor there.
I'm not offended by baldness.
Definitely not here.
It's a warning to all men as to where we could end up if we're not careful.
So Windows NT Terminal Server, it is not one of those really fun mainstream technologies like MIDI or multitasking or, a game console where you encounter it for the first time and it's burned into your brain. Now I know what computers are for. Instead, it's something that was supremely important in making enterprise IT more manageable and predictable. And that helped set the stage for collaborative technologies that made, NetMeeting shared whiteboard seem like a toy. At just over 30 minutes, this really is a great documentary. It highlights all this international collaboration between both extremely large organizations like the US military and the United Nations, along with some very clever individuals working in small shops to make what had been a $1 million technology mundane and free in just a couple decades. So if you have not thought about NetMeeting in 25 years or even ever, this is still a great study of the people behind the technology and the real world processes you need to take something from the drawing board to the mainstream. Welcome to Housekeeping. Dave is fine. He's just not with us this week. We'd alluded that this could happen. Please don't be overly concerned.
Is his heart okay? Because I was so worried about it when you mentioned it the other week.
To our knowledge, his heart is okay. He's over in our Discord channel. He sent us a message. He's fine. Everybody's fine. Also fine are the decisions being made by our new Patreon member, Steve. Thank you so much for joining as an annual member. Thanks for the bonus chat message for us as well. And we'd like to welcome George as a new monthly patron. Thank you also for supporting the show. Reminder also about the 50th birthday Jubilee review drive we got going for Duncan's 50th. We were ahead of pace. Now we're close to the point where we'd be falling behind. So please do submit a review of This Week in Retro to the podcast app of your choice, or you can use Podchaser or some of the other aggregators if yours does not support text reviews, and let us know that it's out there. And then news and brief. When Chris was gone, we had that Chris's Corner news brief that covered your passions. I guess while Dave's away, we should offer a Dave's Dungeon segment. And I think there's an obvious winner this week.
I think there is. Get ready with the counter, Duncan, because there's a massive project to remake 1992's Ultima Underworld in the modern Unity engine, and it's available now. The conversion offers brand new 3D models and sound inspired by the original and derived from the original sprites, but requires original game data to work. You can use the GOG version for convenience, of course, much like I did with Attic Attack last week. It was Wolf. It was Wolf 3D I did that with. Sorry, but let's just throw the correct pronunciation of Attic Attack in once again. The project took over 10 years to create and was actually released to the public a couple of months ago, but has been overlooked until a recent Rock Paper Shotgun article submitted by Robert Crowther.
We got a couple of handheld-related items this week. It turns out that Lenovo, the massive Chinese manufacturer which controls, among other things, the ThinkPad and Motorola mobility brands, well, Lenovo's been selling their own branded handhelds called the Go2, which very much fit the profile of a gamer handheld, and they were often resold that way with a lot of preloaded pirated games. Well, Lenovo has cracked down on distribution of the Go2 outside of China, according to this T3 article submitted to us by Dr. Local. Meanwhile, OKEM 894 pointed us to a Tom's Hardware article documenting that Anbernic, which is another major provider, those fun handhelds for enthusiasts like thee and me, well, Anbernic has been reducing both the size and the speed of memory in models in their popular RG34 line. A cut from 2 gigs to 1 gigs of RAM was intentional, although the company says that some models that were recently unearthed with just 512 megs of memory, they said those were shipped in error and they will be replaced. The Tom's article says that the company did not elaborate on their shift from LPDDR4 memory to slower LPDDR3 parts.
I didn't know it was possible to produce a machine with 512 megs of RAM these days. But anyway, Mike C76 shared that there's a new adventure game based on the H.G. Wells classic The War of the Worlds. The game is for Commodore 64. It features both choice-based and text parser input and comes with so much graphical material that it spans 6 disk sides.
And speaking of the C64, one of the greatest challenges to keeping one healthy is coming up with a modern power supply that will not fry the sensitive chips like Commodore's originals had a tendency to do. And that's my original C64 slowly but inexorably fell victim to that problem and has taken out many, many systems since. Well, there's a new solution from Side Projects Lab, which on the surface seems great. It makes modern commodity-grade USB-C power delivery supply, makes use of one of those to supply what it says are the accurate levels of both DC and AC power to the system. And this is a nice slim module. It juts out just slightly from the side of the C64, connects via USB-C. The project circuitry and layout are published to GitHub for your own personal use and soldering up if you'd like. But because of licensing restrictions on this design, if you want to buy an assembled one, there's only one authorized vendor as of this writing, which is a shop in Germany that's charging almost $90. I will be interested to see if that changes over time. Thank you again to OKM894 for that submission.
Hubris I tells us that Retro Hours Dan Wood is back with a new video about Commodore OS Vision, an unusual Linux distribution. He cheekily installed it on an Atari VCS, not the original console from 1977, but the modern console from a few years ago with an AMD processor and its own version of Linux installed. Dan's got a lot of nice things to say about the experience, and Commodore OS is free to install and use, so you might want to take a look. And I actually watched that video as well. It's a fantastic video. Love Dan's work. And he's very honest about which parts of because it emulates as well, both C64 and Amiga with inside the OS quite neatly. And he's very honest about what did and didn't work for him. Fantastic watch.
I read that username as Hubris1, as though like it was the first in a line of...
I was going to say Hubris1. Yeah, I was going to say Hubris1, but on my screen it looks like an I, so I'm going with it.
That's like your first interstellar spaceship. It's the Hubris1.
Yes.
Speaking of Commodore operating systems, Weeping Scorpion posted about a previously lost operating system, Amiga Unix version 2.02. The surrounding revisions of Amiga Unix had been archived. This particular one was considered lost media until it was found on a recently auctioned computer. Amiga Unix had a moment in the sun on the Amiga 3000, which you could get in a workstation configuration if you were looking for an alternative to other 68,000-based Unix machines like those you could get at the time from Sun or Next.
C Weldiness 7525 let us know there's a video going over a little-known variant of the Amstrad PPC 640 luggable computer. This one, obtained by Action Retro, was designed for the American market. He's even got the original Amstrad soft carrying case for this pioneering portable PC clone.
And finally, there are a couple of Amiga expansions to watch. Arnold Jot submitted a Rob Smith video in which Rob has turned the Amiga's external floppy port into a slow but steady networking adapter. And Spudgy, really hitting us with the challenging nicknames here at the end, Spudgy pointed us to a work in progress for an optical drive emulation replacement for the CD32. Uses the Raspberry Pi Pico 2, some basic add-on parts. If you would like to submit stories, upvote, downvote, just participate in the comments, please visit us at reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro.
Well, last week I took on the Third Reich in the isometric version of Wolf 3D, known as IsoWolf. And it seems I'm now stuck in a land of not really 3D, with isometric, of course, being a view you will never, ever encounter in real life. Those parallel lines never meeting at a vanishing point are lying to you, man. And while I stand by my comments in the Nintendo story we covered earlier, not all projects are the same, as we'll see in this story. This week's isometric game is the sequel to a game initially from 1987. Head Over Heels was an isometric platform puzzler in which the player controlled two dog-like characters called Head, who could jump high, control direction midair, and fire projectiles, and Heels, who could run fast and carry items. And if they ever meet up in the game, you could combine them and their powers. The original game had about 300 rooms, and I believe I played a bit of this on the Spectrum back in the day. And it was ported to pretty much everything, including the Amstrad C64, the Atari 8-bit, and also onto the 16-bits, including the Amiga and the Atari ST. And it was published by Ocean Software. And it is in Ocean who it would seem are to blame for the game's sequel never seeing the light of day. You see, many of those ports were the work of developer Colin Porch, and he's recently been in a short news piece on the UK TV channel ITV, as shared with us by Weeping Scorpion. In the 2.5-minute segment, Colin Porch is shown with a massive smile on his face, playing on his Atari ST, 37-year late sequel to Head Over Heels called Return to Blacktooth. Having finally completed the development of the game, Ocean told him to shelve. They blame the growth of games consoles for scrapping the game because, why not just develop it for the consoles then? But no, they just put the brakes on the game. I think this would have made a great console game, to be honest, but anyway. But it was actually a company reunion at which Colin's ex-boss apparently inspired him to pick up where he left off and finish the game, in part because of the growth of the retro scene. Along with the coding challenges, Colin, of course, had to track down the IP rights holders. I've said it before and I'll say it again, just because it's old doesn't mean you can do what you like with it. Abandonware doesn't exist. In fact, I believe the legal term is orphaned works, and depending on where you are in the world, the restrictions around those differ. So they had to find the IP holders, get permission, and now they can market the game legally, published by Thalamus Digital, who also bought us Roadcraft. What I love, though, about this whole news segment is not so much the game itself, but seeing the smile on Colin's face as he plays his creation on the ST with the quite rare QuickShot 2 Plus joystick. So that's the QuickShot 2 mold, but with micro switches. And the one he's holding looks brand spanking new and it's clicking away nicely. He looks just genuinely happy to be finally talking about this sequel and playing it 37 years after its initial conception. I think the longest I've waited for a sequel would be Duke Nukem Forever, but actually that was only 14 years. And in the modern day, I mean, heck, GTA 6 will probably overtake that easily. So guys, what's the longest you've ever waited for a game? Was it worth it? And what do you make of this heartwarming story of Colin's?
Yeah, this was an interesting name. He's got a really interesting set of credits. I would say arguably the work that most people will have encountered was his soundtrack for the home edition of Dragon's Lair. So he was both, he did programming, he did porting. Did you mention, Chris, by the way, that there's been a little bit of, I think it's not really controversy, but Colin was not the creator. You kind of alluded, he had to track down the IP rights. So he did not create Head Over Heels, but he was involved. He was the programmer who ported it to a few systems. And he was apparently the one who was tasked with Head Over Heels too. So yes, original creatorship of Head Over Heels, different guys, but this sequel, he was, my understanding, he was the guy who was leading it. So that's totally legit. But yeah, interesting credits across different disciplines in that late 80s period. As far as waiting such a long time for a game, I did notice that the ITV report, they mused, well, this might be the longest that a computer game has been in development. I mean, if you're willing to count iterative releases, then things like, the Star Trek game Colossal Cave, those have been in development for much, much longer, like 50 years plus.
The longest I've ever waited for a game, I was 9 years old, and Jamie Hawkes at my school was going to lend me Knight Rider on the Dragon 32, right?
Oh, boy.
And every day I'd go in and say, Jamie, have you got, oh, no, I forgot it. I'll bring it tomorrow. Decades later, I found out there is no game. There is no Knight Rider on the Dragon 32. He had made it up. Ooh. And I was gutted, absolutely gutted. What I like about this, I've been to a few of those Crash and Zap events and a few others, and I've done a few interviews there with some of the old game designers. A lot of them in their 60s and 70s now have no idea that people are still playing their games 50 years later. And they are really surprised when they walk into a room that's got 700 people and they go and do a Q&A in front of 400 people who've all got copies of the cassettes or the discs to sign. And they sit there. I've seen it. I've been sat on stage with them. They sit there and they go, well, is this for me? I go, yeah, people love your game or your games meant so much to these people that 45, 50 years later, they are back here because they want to say thank you to you. Stuff like that is magic. And it feels like a similar thing has happened with this dude here.
I think you got off lightly with the Knight Rider story, by the way, there, Ian, because, I mean, there was a version for the Spectrum and it was terrible. So
that's one of those infamously terrible licensed titles. So, right. Is it better to have loved and lost or to be spared?
As a kid, though, I think I would have still been obsessed. I do think there is a whole thing in people that pretend games actually exist to look cool. That Jamie guy. Yeah. I've spoken to him since and I have forgiven him. So we're all cool.
Oh,
that's very counselor-y of you. I'd like to hear that.
And on your point, Jason, I think I'm going to override you slightly because the way I read the story, it's nothing like an iteration. This is him picking up where he left off and finishing what he started. So this is a genuine continued development released on the same platforms it was always intended for. And on that note, on that note,
I have been overridden, sir.
Overridden. There you go. But the game is now available for purchase on what it was intended for, the ST and the Amiga, published by Thalamus Digital, as I said. And it's available in a download package for $13 American. The downloadable game, according to their itch.io page, includes a WHD load package and also an ADF version. And is compatible with emulators and original hardware as well, including 1 megabyte OCS Amigas or greater. So everything back to the original hardware. On that page, you'll also find the full credits of who's involved. So obviously it was the Amiga page I was looking at specifically. And among those credits are the Hoffman So that guy gets everywhere. But there's also a link for a physical copy, which is set to drop in Q3 of this year. You know me, I buy into some of these projects, but not all of them. I'm very picky. But this 2-minute, 30-second piece has really added a human element to this story. And while this isn't my kind of game, I can see this in my purchasing future for sure. Well done, Colin, for finishing this game at the age of 81. And thank you for your genuine passion for the games you make. It's time now for our community question of the week. And last week's question was, given that Attic Attack and Wolfenstein 3D have both been given a new perspective, we wondered what retro game would you like to see in 3D? Or what modern game would you like to see in retro 2D? I believe we're out of contest mode. So
Thank you for playing. We are.
Very quickly, if I may, I'd like to see Fortnite in retro. And I do love a bit of Fortnite. I'm terrible, but play it with my kids. And Strikers Run on the BBC in 3D. There's a niche reference. 6 people will be going, oh, yeah, that would be good. I have the Reddit in front of me. Fendrana says, Jet Set Willy would be brilliant as a full 3D game. Oh, yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Either first or third person. That would...
Oh, yeah.
Surely someone must have tackled that at some point. Because that's glaringly obvious, but also a brilliant suggestion. Yeah, I like that.
I'm seeing a sort of Jet Set Willy, but feeling a bit Tomb Raider-y. Yeah. So third person. Oh, that would be cool. That would be very cool. Next answer, Jason?
Next one down. Fiskit, file system, check it, however you want to say it. I'd like to see Paperboy in 3D. That way you can get off the bike and punch all the bleepers who keep stepping out in front of you, trying to knock you off. Hopefully by Wednesday, they'll have learned their lessons and you can deliver your papers in peace. And there's a little bit of discussion that there was a 3D Paperboy 64, but Fiskit clarifies, I was thinking more of a GTA type engine. So yes, Grand Theft Paperboy, I think, is the thing we're going for here. And Chris, you want to read our great fraud showing up once again?
Well, I just want to say I think Fiskit was a genuine Paperboy from back in the day because I was, and I carry the sentiment. Jeff
right.
Mendoza,
yeah,
he's here again. And he says Outrun, but in proper 3D. Isn't that Outrun Coast to Coast? Anyway, we'll run with it. So Outrun, but in proper 3D. Before anyone starts screaming, I know that, he said that. He's covered it. He says, I know I'm describing Outrun 2. The problem is Outrun 2 disappeared from the storefronts years ago when the Ferrari license expired. He's quite right. It's new enough to be difficult to emulate, but old enough to require an old, unreliable console to play it. Also, the music was far better in the original. That's fair comment, but I have to say it's not hard to get a hold of a PS2, mate. I've got it on the PS2 and it plays fantastically. But you're right, this disappeared from the storefront not because they don't have the Sega license, but because they don't have the Ferrari license and IP and all that. It exists, but I'm as angry as everybody else.
Can I just interrupt? You mentioned PlayStation 2. This is a tangent. I saw that they've premiered a film in the Cannes Film Festival where all the characters are rendered. I can't remember if it's either PS1 or PS2. Have you seen it, Chris?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, the trailer looks wild. And at some point in the film, they realize they're in a PS1 game. And I just love that style of animation of the faces and the movement. Sorry, that's a complete tangent. Maybe something for next week.
That sounds fantastic.
Quentin Dupuy's Le Vertige satirizes a world obsessed with realism and a world that won't strain your graphics card.
Ooh.
I think that might be.
Sounds right up my alley.
Right.
Sorry, wild tangent, but you mentioning the PS2 just reminded me of that. I'm very excited by that.
So get us some articles about this posted to our subreddit for next week, and also please join us for the community question of the week for episode 271, which is only septuagenarians and up need apply. Colin Porch, as mentioned, is releasing a new title at age 81. So what game dev, age 70 plus, as of, June 2026, what game dev age 70 right now do you want to see one more game from?
Not Mike Daly, then. Wanted to pretend Mike Daly was old enough. Sorry, Mike, you can't enter this one.
I was going to suggest Matthew Smith, but he's only 60. We're talking about Manic Miner. He's 60. He was a baby, wasn't he, when he wrote that?
Yeah. You got to look for people who were proper grown-ups in the 1980s if you want somebody who applies to this. So please do check it out. Reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro. Ian, thank you so much for making time in your busy neo radio, podcasting, counseling, touring world to join us here on This Week in Retro. Give both Chris and I a chance to have hosted a show with you.
Yep.
It's been such a thrill. Before we get to the wave, am I okay to sit out the wave? Just because I know Chris and Dave love it. I feel Jason's contempt for it as we listen to the show. I don't know if you've made peace with the wave yet, Jason, or where you are with that.
Well, it's interesting that you bring this up because because you don't watch. So I will say there are definitely times when I'm feeling it, but what I don't I don't like the obligatory nature of it. So that I think is the problem. And now that you've kind of given me license to, do I want to leave Chris just hanging?
Am I going to be the only one waving?
Spotlighted it. I don't know. So you know what I'm going to say. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate those of you who are watching. I do want to wave goodbye to you today. So
I'm going to wave now. I
appreciate that, Ian. I like that you've given me agency on this, and that is worth more than you can know.
We're all waving.
Possibly even 350 pounds plus 25 if you're 50 miles away from where Ian lives.
Thank you for having me on. This is a very, very long wave.
It's a long wave. It's an awkward wave at this point.
Get back to those random access memories so I can come on one, Ian.
Yes, I will. I will when I get the urge.
Nice. Bye, everyone.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 AGIMA, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.